I shouldn't have eaten that taco.
So, I've been playing around with Reshade lately, and I was in the search for a game that I was familiar enough with its levels so I can better appreciate the changes that I've made to it using this surprisingly versatile shader injector. I did some Google searching, and
one eternity later,
there it was, with all of its obscure glory. The one, the only, Enslaved Odyssey to the West. And after I spent a few hours of my not-so-precious life fine-tuning the shaders, I decided to make a review-style video about this mostly forgotten game, with the hope that this will
fill your dark soul with light!
So, without further stalling, here are my thoughts on Enslaved Odyssey to the West. The game that I've mentioned in the title of this video is an action-adventure game, which seems to me that it's heavily inspired by Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. It has very similar gameplay, and like its inspiration, it has a well-told story, where the two main protagonists are forced in a situation that they have to get through by working together. At the beginning of the adventure, they don't quite get along, but after surviving through many life-threatening circumstances,
the walls of animosity between them slowly start crumbling, and something sexual begins erecting.
And now, because of my Slavic mouth's inability to pronounce certain words in an understandable manner, my assistant American Google Translate girl will give you a quick synopsis of Enslaved's story. Take it away, Miss Girl!
Thank you, sir. Enslaved is set 150 years after a global war has destroyed the world. Only remnants of humanity survive, along with the still active war machines left over from the conflict. The story begins with the main character Monkey awakening in a containment cell aboard a slave ship just as the vessel is about to crash. He and a woman named Trip leave the ship via escape pod, which unfortunately also doesn't quite stick the landing and causes Monkey to lose consciousness. When Monkey wakes up, he discovers that Trip has placed a slave headband on him, which forces him to follow her orders. Trip then explains that she wants to return to her village and that she needs his help to get there. Monkey is understandably angry, but when he realizes that he has no choice in the matter, he complies.
After my assistant slapped the synopsis of this game's opening act, I will repeat myself and say that I think the story is competently told, and the voice acting is mostly well done. They even got Andy Serkis, the Duderino who played Gollum in the Lord of the Rings movies, to voice Monkey, and I think two other characters. With Monkey, he does an American accent, which he breaks a few times, but when it comes to the acting part of the performance, he does a great job. If there's anything about this story that I don't like, it has to be the attempts at humor with the comic relief character Pigsy, who joins the duo later in the game. And even though it's inexplicit and developed in a very natural way, I think the romance between Monkey, who looks like he's in his mid to late 30s, and Trip, who's
A teenage girl.
is a bit on the weird side, but that do be happening sometimes, and who wouldn't fall for them
Buns of steel.
From the gameplay side of things, you do some fighting, some climbing, some puzzle solving, you participate in a few firefights, and at times you're able to ride a hoverboard type thingy, which Monkey calls a
cloud.
Doesn't look like a cloud. Well, maybe a little like a cloud.
It doesn't. Alright. And the combat. Well, it doesn't have the complexity of the Devil May Cry games, that's for sure. But it has enough fighting mechanics not to feel entirely like a mindless beat-em-up, even though it can totally be played as one. First off, you have your basic 3-hit combo, but if you're a bit far from the enemy, Monkey does one extra move to close the distance. There is also a 2-hit heavy attack, and if you continuously hit the enemies without interruptions, your staff begins to glow, which signifies that you're now able to perform a flashy special attack that does massive damage. When you hold the attack button and then release it, Monkey performs a charge attack, which is used to break the guard of the enemies and stuns them for a short period of time. If the situation calls for it, you can always dodge, which can be followed with an attack. Or you can block, and if you press the B button on the controller after a successful block, Monkey does a counterattack. With some enemies, after you've inflicted enough blunt force trauma upon them, a button prompt appears above their heads. If you choose to press that button, Monkey disposes of the enemy with a masterfully animated finishing move. Other than melee attacks, Monkey's elongating staff is also capable of splurging out two types of projectiles, orange and blue. The orange one is used to inflict damage, and the blue one stuns the bad guys, and it's also used to break the shields of the shielded ones. The next critique is mostly on the PC port of the game, and not the game itself, but aiming felt kinda awkward. The camera moved as if I was using a controller, even though I was using mouse and keyboard, so it felt very stiff and unnatural. That caveat ring already somewhat tedious and not that well-designed shooting segments even more for me, so I wasn't exactly having fun whenever I was forced into one. Almost forgot. There are these glowy little orange orbs that you obtain by smashing some robot ass, or by searching for them throughout the various crevices of the levels. Then, you can use these orbs to buy all kinds of upgrades from ship. For example, you can upgrade your health bar, the force field that provides protection against shoot banging, you can increase the damage of your melee and ranged attacks, and you can even buy a few new moves to expand the combat options at your disposal. Now that I mentioned Trip, it reminded me of these segments where you need to use Trip's ability to create holograms in order to distract a group of gun-armed robo-baddies that are relentlessly shooting at you. While the dummies are busy projectiling at the hologram, your job is to find a way to sneak up on the robos and beat the existence out of them. The other most prevalent thing to do in this game aside from combat is climbing, and it's very simplistic, but it's a joy to perform thanks to the beautiful and fluid animations. All you need to do is just push to the direction where the glowing climbable object is and press the jump button. Weirdly enough, at times the climbable objects are not that noticeable, and it's not necessarily because my eyesight is comparable to a bat's. It's because most of the levels are bright, colorful, and can be very busy, so the glow doesn't stand out that much. As I mentioned earlier, there is a small number of puzzles sprinkled throughout the game, and I wouldn't describe them as brain-busting. To be clear, I think this is for the best, because this is a story-driven game, full with fast-paced combat, shitty shootouts, and monkeying around collapsed or collapsing structures. So, in my opinion, if most of the puzzles were well thought out and took my boiled brain around 15 to 20 minutes to solve, it would be at odds with the pacing that I've been accustomed to, hence making the experience less enjoyable for me. The last thing to talk about that has anything to do with gameplay is the not cloud riding. This little gadget is not usable wherever you want in the game. The only times that you are allowed to ride it is in wide open areas where you have multiple small objectives scattered around the place, and in some boss and mini-boss fights, where usually after you've hit the big boys over the head enough times, the poor motherfuckers start running for their life, and Monkey chases after them to finish what he started. These chases are very fun, and controlling the Nut Cloud feels amazing. While you're riding the thing, there are these blue balls that, when you pass through them, they give you a massive speed boost, and the sense of velocity is captured really well in those moments. Something that I have yet to share my opinions about is the visual presentation of the game, and the fact of the matter is that I think this game looks absolutely gorgeous. Enslaved has outstanding character and world design, and unlike most of its contemporary post-apocalyptic visual narratives, it doesn't sacrifice the variety and saturation of its colors to make its world seem more desolate and bleak. It simply lets the environments to communicate that for themselves. For example,
the second level is set in the nature-consumed ruins of New York City, where every nook and cranny is now engulfed by vivid greenery. When you exit the war-torn Grand Central Terminal, you are welcomed by the bright blue skies and the warm touch of the golden sun rays. Cars, containers, and everything metal surrounding you is covered in orange-brown rust, and the washed-out billboards give Monkey and Trip a small glimpse of the times that they never had a chance to experience.
That was just one example, but if you pay close enough attention, every single level of this game has that much thought and detail put into it. So yeah, after my try-hard, pretentious, but thankfully short babbling about this cute little game's visuals, I think it's time to wrap things up. In short, Enslaved Odyssey to the West is a good action-adventure game, with a well-crafted story, simple but fun gameplay, beautiful visuals and animations, and a healthy dose of jank. It makes me sad that it got so undeservedly overlooked, and I wouldn't mind if Ninja Theory produced another adventure set in this vibrant post-apocalyptic world. But, given how much time has passed since the game's release, and the fact that it was a commercial flop, that seems highly unlikely. Thank you guys for watching, and if I manage to make another video, I hope I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a nice day.